There's something called the Lozado ratio, Losadio. What that is, that's a ratio of positive thoughts to negative thoughts. And what it says is for every one negative thought that we have, in order to wipe out the one negative thought, we need three positive thoughts. It's kind of like to balance it out.
Okay.
So it's like I have a negative thought, and like I said, you'll dwell on the negative thought, right? You'll just keep dwelling on it and dwelling on it. But if you have three positive thoughts after that, so if it's like, I failed the test, okay, you failed the test, or you didn't get matched. The positive thoughts, I can try again. I can do it this way this time. I can hire someone. I know other people who have not matched on the first time and they tried and they got it on their second time. Like you have to combat that negative thought.
Hey there, and welcome to the IMG Residency Match podcast. You're in the right place if you're an ambitious international medical graduate who wants insider strategies and inspiration to help you match into residency. I'm your host, Shauna K. Lester. I've been an admission consultant and writing coach for 12 years, and for the last 7 years, I've helped IMGs create residency applications that help them get multiple interviews, match, and create the medical career they want. Successfully making it through medical school and the match process requires that you stay the course, even when you feel like giving up. It requires that you have mental strength and resilience. Today on the IMG Residency Match podcast, we're talking about mental health for the high-achieving, ambitious IMG with Seneca Williams. Seneca is a licensed mental health therapist and coach. She's also a mental health advocate experienced in supporting entrepreneurs and high-achieving graduate students from around the world. On this episode, we'll talk about what you should do every time you have a negative thought about your match process, how journaling can improve your mental health, what's imposter syndrome and how you can get rid of it, how you can improve your self-worth and your self-esteem, which is key for standing out in the match process, and how you can become more resilient. So on social media, you go by the name Coach Sen. Who is Coach Sen?
Coach Sen is so many different people, and I wear so many different hats. So Coach Sen really is something funny that I started even before I launched the business, because I am always the go-to person in family, in my workplaces. So I've always been that person, like, ask her, ask Sen, right? So I put ask Coach Sen. So, under that hat and under that umbrella of Ask Coach Sen, I do practice psychotherapy online. I am a licensed therapist in New York State and in Florida, and my practice is online. So I support people through video or phone, audio. Many people are confused about that. I also provide coaching, and coaching and therapy are not the same thing. So I'm also a coach, and I am a coach internationally. I can serve people all around the world in coaching. And besides that, I'm a mom to a new teenager. I am a daughter, a sister, a friend. I love volunteering and philanthropy, and I'm a mental health advocate.
Okay. All right. So the mental health part, thank you, is why you're here today. So you said that you're a therapist and you're also a coach. You're a mental health advocate. What is the difference between a therapist and a coach?
Okay, so this is a great question, because sometimes people want to use it interchangeably. They think that if they are going through something, they can just hire a coach. And the reason for that is because of the stigma associated with therapy or mental health. So what therapy is for someone who is struggling with their daily functioning. So they may be experiencing symptoms that could be diagnosed in the DSM-5, and it could be diagnosed as an anxiety disorder, a depressive disorder, a personality disorder, or anything that they find is causing them to have trouble with how they function. So if you function normally, you're able to go to work and school, and you're able to concentrate and eat healthy. Like, those are your normal functioning. But if you find that, man, some weeks have passed and I can't get out of bed and I'm not eating, I'm not sleeping, I'm not producing the way that I used to, I'm not as productive, I feel sad all the time, I'm crying, I'm nervous, I'm having panic attacks, that's when you would go to therapy, because therapy will help you to not only learn more about the disorder, it will help you to learn coping skills, and
Mm-hmm.
it will go into where the origin of it is. Sometimes things happen to you in childhood that are affecting you now. It could also be that you experienced something traumatic, like the loss of a loved one, or you were in an accident, or you had a major loss, something like that. So that's
Right.
what therapy is. When you talk about coaching is much like coaching for athletic sports. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of going to someone to help them to reach your goals. So if you have a specific goal in mind and you're like, I need to reach this goal, but I'm not able to do this on my own, you hire a coach and they would tap into what your strengths are and some of your weaknesses. They can see your blind spots. So it's almost like you're going there fully functioning with your strengths, but this person is helping you come up with a game plan to reach that goal. It's very solution focused, it's very directive. It's not focused on treating any kind of trauma or emotional disturbance. That's not what it's for. And of course, there are things that can come up, like, your day to day dealing with stressors, but it's not for anything that's severe that's causing you not to be able to function.
Thank you. I understand. So, when you talk about mindset coaching in particular, because I know that you do work with individuals who want to work on their mindset, what on earth is that?
Okay. So mindset, like you said, it's one of those words where you hear it a lot, but people don't really know what mindset is. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
confused by it. And it just, after a while, it just sounds like a word, right? A catchphrase. So
Right.
what I say mindset is, it's kind of like your universal worldview. Like, it's how you see things. So you can have a mindset, a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. So I'll explain that. A fixed mindset would believe that if something happens, then this is just the way that it is. So they kind of believe that things are very external. I come from a poor neighborhood, so that means that I'm going to probably be poor. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a fixed mindset, where someone with a growth mindset would say, even though I see this environment around me, even though these have been my past experiences and this is what I see in my family, a growth mindset says, you know what? I have the ability to change my reality. I can, learn things. I can grow. I can try something else, and I do not have to be stuck here. So mindset is like a worldview, and our mindset can be changed if we are aware that we want a goal, we want to achieve something, and we find that we have a hard time, thinking positively or thinking that we can, influence our circumstances, you can
Yes.
get coached into how to have a growth mindset.
Very interesting. So, I'm thinking in particular of the group of individuals that I work with, international medical graduates. And sometimes people face very steep hurdles in preparing for their residency match process. Like they have a failure in a key exam. So, is there such a thing as mindset never working just because the odds really are against you that much? Or do you feel like with the right mindset, people can overcome most things and find a way?
I definitely believe that with the right mindset, you can overcome just about anything. The thing is, for a lot of probably who you're working with, they may be the first in their family to try to attain these goals, right? So maybe
Hmm.
everyone in their family and those behind them haven't achieved this. Many of us come into this as like the first generation to graduate from college. So if you are the first generation to graduate from college and those behind you have not achieved that, sometimes what they say, sometimes their own experiences can influence you, and it can make it really hard for you to think that I can come out of this. But
Hmm.
when you attach yourself to others who speak positively, who pour into you, who influence your mindset, things will change for you. So just think of people, who we see who have risen from poverty or, things like that. We know of Tyler Perry is one of them. Steve Harvey. They don't come from wealthy backgrounds. They came from working class and poor backgrounds. And because of their mindset, they were able to rise above that and pursue like these magnificent goals and achieve them.
So my other question to you is, being a therapist yourself, have you ever had to work on your own mindset?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
If you ever encounter a therapist or coach who says no, run the other way. So,
Okay. Liars.
yes, like definitely you have to work on yourself. There has to be some self awareness. So, in my own journey as a therapist, I was lucky to be in a master's program where it was encouraged that we got our own therapy and that we worked on ourselves. Now, growing up, I come from a Caribbean background. So I always
Mhm.
knew like there's just certain things that don't seem right. There's just
Okay.
certain things that don't seem right or feel right, but I wasn't encouraged to talk about them. I wasn't encouraged to feel my emotions or address emotions. It was kind of like, just be happy and fix your face and that's it.
Mm.
When I became older and I entered into undergraduate, I started, experiencing a lot of anxiety around exams and, becoming successful and being afraid of failure. So I knew, okay, I need to work on this. And that was my first time exploring what, therapy was,
Okay.
what is mental health and what is therapy. Now, for myself, I started, dibbling and dabbling a little bit here and there, but it wasn't until I did my master's program that I really took a deep dive into therapy and into my own mind and how my experiences, my upbringing, my environment, the things I've learned, the stigma was affecting my ability to pursue things. Because I would hold
Mhm.
myself back, I would hide, I wouldn't feel good enough, I wouldn't speak up, things like that. Like even till this day, I consistently work on my mindset because, as an entrepreneur, I have to promote myself. Sometimes I go into spaces where people have 20, 30, 40 years experience. That can cause
Wow.
insecurity, right? When you're sitting on a stage with people who are like, I've been doing this for 50 years and I am a doctor, that can make me feel like hiding under a table. But
Right.
when I work on my mindset, developing how I think about myself, like I don't have to compete or compare with these people. I'm bringing my own unique point of view. I'm bringing my own voice. It changes things for me. I am now able
Mhm.
to break through like these invisible ceilings that I used to create for myself. So that was the long way of answering. Yes, I worked on my mindset and still continue to.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you use that example actually, because sometimes when I talk with young physicians, especially normally right before they're about to go to interview and they're just so nervous that in some way they're inadequate, I'm often pointing out to them because to me it just, it makes sense, but I'm sure we struggle, we all struggle with this, that it's just you are so young in your journey. Why would you know all these things, But if you give yourself time, you could perhaps be even more accomplished than the person who's interviewing you. Because when it comes to building a career, there are certain things that really just take time and experience, but it doesn't mean that you're not adding value or that you're not getting results at the stage that you're at.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for young doctors, this is what I'll say for young doctors and those in the medical field. What they must understand is they're coming in with a fresh approach. And
Mhm.
sometimes those who have been in the field for 40 or 50 years, they do have experience. However, things are changing and evolving and updating. And those who have been in the field for 50 years, sometimes they can kind of have this belief that I already know. So I don't
Mhm.
have to do the research. I don't have to study this anymore. Whereas those who are younger, they're still hungry. They're still excited about it. They still know they have more to learn. They're like sponges. So they
Mhm.
actually can learn faster. They can learn more and they can have more to bring to the table because they're still in it, growing and developing as things are changing in the medical industry. It's a positive thing.
Yes, yes, it is to be able to, learn and to be a part of everything that's emerging. So I was wondering, could you tell us a little bit about your experience, clearly without divulging your patient's information or your client's information? Could you tell us a little bit about your exposure to clients who are in medicine or specifically in any sort of medical training?
So, what I find is I work with a lot of high achievers, right? So, throughout school, they are honor roll students, they are top of the class, they are valedictorians. And once they come out of school, it can be very challenging because now you're competing not with just your school, but basically the rest of the world. It can be very intimidating, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you were the big fish in your school, now you might feel like the little fish among all these other schools all over the world. And what I realize is they struggle with, some major things. We hear a lot about this buzzword imposter syndrome. So even though they felt or achieved success in the past, they might still feel like, I don't really deserve to be here. I'm not really good enough. I'm not as good as everyone else. They might experience a lot of that. And there are some other things they may experience impression management. So to give an example of that is impression management is you want to show the world that you are a certain way, but
Okay.
you're also kind of masking other things. So it can be a negative depending on how you're doing this. So I'll give an example of, you have your home, right? Let's say you have a home and you have company coming over. They're coming over for
Mm-hmm.
dinner in a few minutes. And you're like, oh my God, the house is a mess. So you just start sweeping things under the rug and you just throw some stuff in the closet, right? And hide some stuff, behind the couch. And then you're like, okay, they're here, but you're going to be trying to hide the things that you don't want them to see, and you're going to be very focused on what you're hiding. You're not going to
Mm.
be really present. So sometimes with high achievers, they want to show up as that honor roll student, and because of that they're showing, these are all my achievements, these are all the things that I know, but they don't ask the questions. They don't ask for help. It's kind of like a little bit of a shame if they don't know
Okay.
something and they feel embarrassment. And that can
Mm.
like kind of hurt them, because when they should be networking and asking questions and getting help and getting coached, they want to present that I know it already. I know it all. I got this. And that
Mhm.
causes a lot of stress and anxiety trying to do that.
All right. And you didn't explain to us what is imposter syndrome. Could you talk a bit about that?
Okay, so imposter syndrome, it's not an actual diagnosis like in the DSM. It's not like a mental health diagnosis, but it was a term coined back in like I think the 70s, and I at a loss right now for the name of the person who coined that term. But it is such a buzzword and a catchphrase today. And really what imposter syndrome is, maybe you have achieved a level of success, right? You've gotten awards and accolades, you've gotten recognition that, you are successful. But inside, you don't feel that way. You feel
Mm-hmm.
this is not real. I just got lucky. They made a mistake. Maybe no one else was, that good this time. It's kind of like the self talk in your head is telling you, they're going to figure out that I'm a fraud, that I don't really belong here, that I'm not as good as these other people. And that
Mm-hmm.
can really make people feel really insecure, and it can cause a lot of self doubt where it causes people to self sabotage. They may not apply for things, they may miss the deadline, they may not make the phone calls or send the emails that they need to, because they're feeling like, why should I even try if they're going to find out that I don't really belong here? So imposter syndrome is something that people deal with. And I tell people one of the ways that you work through that is identifying the source of your fears, like going into your fears, because many of them say, I'm afraid of failure. So figuring out, okay, if you're afraid of failure, right, what is your belief about what failure means? And how can you work through that? Well, it's your definition of failure and what you do with failure.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
So when I have clients who tell me that they're struggling with a fear of failure and they feel like failure is final. It means that this is it. This is my last shot. My life is over. I'm never going to apply again. I'm never going to do anything again.
Mm-hmm.
I suggest to them, go back to the past and learn where you got these automatic beliefs about failure. Many of us learn that failure is shameful, or we got punished when we failed, or we were embarrassed because we failed. So failure is a very negative thing, and it reflects on us very negatively. And the truth is, many people fail, but just not in public.
Okay.
They're failing, but they're not posting their failing grades, right? They're not posting the first time that they failed this exam, but then the next time they pass it, they post the passing. So
Right.
there's a great book called Failing Forward by John Maxwell. And I recommend this book, Failing Forward, because it talks about how to turn your failures into wins. And I tell people the way that I define failure is it's just information. It's just telling you that this time didn't work out, this way didn't work out, try it a different way, try again. That's all failure is telling me. Failure is not telling me that, I'm bad, I'm not smart, it's not for me. That's not what failure is telling me. Failure is telling me to try again.
Okay. Wow, I like that perspective in terms of the information. So, actually, related to that, sometimes when I have different clients and you ask certain questions and you get to the root of their doubts, to me, it is a feeling of unworthiness. So, let's say they didn't get the highest step one score possible. And yes, in reality, that does make them less competitive, but it's almost as if people internalize it to make it like they start feeling somehow that they're unworthy. And I was wondering if there's any sort of explanation from science or from psychology about where feelings of unworthiness originate from specifically.
There are so many different layers to that, because the feelings of unworthiness can come from within themselves. It might not just be academic, it could be just in general. So you'll see themes. If this person feels unworthy in their academics or their profession, they may feel unworthy in relationships or
Mhm.
friendships or family, right? That's one thing. So it's kind of exploring the emotional side. Like, well, how do they feel in general? Do they have a hard time with self-esteem and unworthiness in general? Did this come from people in their past not celebrating them, or putting them down? Did it come from that? But on another level, there's something called the locus of control. The locus of control is your belief in how much influence you have on things that happen to you, right? So there are two different types, right? Some people will believe that what happens is external. So they have an external locus of control. And they'll believe, well, I got this grade because the teacher gave me this grade, right? It's out of their control. This is the grade the teacher gave me. So they feel like if there's anything, any praise or any blame, it goes to something outside of them.
Okay.
Then there are people with the internal locus of control, where they believe that they do have control over what happens to them. And they may feel like, okay, I didn't pass, I didn't, match this time, or I didn't get this grade this time. It's because, oh, I didn't study enough, I didn't whatever. And in those ways, it's almost easier for them to deal with the setbacks and the failure, because they know that, well, okay, maybe I just need to study a little bit more or try a little harder, instead of, oh, they just gave it away, right? So there are
Right.
some people who will believe I didn't get into this school or this program because they didn't want to give it to me. I'm not worthy of getting it, right? Where that person with the internal locus of control would say, okay, well, I didn't get in this time. Maybe there's something that I can do differently when I apply again. Maybe I need to, try contacting this person to help me with this weakness that I have, or maybe someone can give me a tip and then I can do something differently. So it kind of changes their sense of worthiness. When you think someone just gives you something because of your worth, it kind of makes you feel helpless.
All right. I actually wanted to talk also about, I don't know how you describe it, but sometimes people describe it as speaking over yourself, the things that we say. So let's say, for instance, someone is applying to the match and they keep, or sometimes if they don't do it constantly, they say to themselves, I'm doing this, but I'm not going to match. Oh, this is so hard. I'm not going to match. What do you know in psychology about the effect of speaking certain things out loud?
So first of all, that just sucks, right?
Okay.
Just think about if you heard someone having a conversation and they told that person, oh, you're going to apply to that school, you're not going to make it. Just imagine if you were observing that. Like,
Right.
would that person even want to try? So,
Right.
there's that. But when it's internal, we don't see it that way because we're talking to ourselves. But we know if we observe two people having that conversation, we would think that person was really mean and horrible. Like, oh my God, how could you say that to them?
Right.
Ourselves, we allow ourselves to talk this way. And if you say to yourself, I'm going to apply, but I know I'm not going to get it, your mind is going to agree. It's like we download information in our mind, right? We wire our mind by the things we say. So if you're telling yourself it's not going to happen, your mind already agrees with you and it won't come up with solutions to make it happen. It'll kind of shut down. So it's almost like you put like a brick wall there, like a dead end. When it
That's
comes
very
to,
interesting. How
yeah,
does that work? Could you tell me some more about that? So, okay, so let's say, for instance, if I say, okay, or if somebody says, yeah, I'm going to match into the most competitive program ever, does their mind start planning how it's possible for them to achieve that?
exactly. So when your mind says, I am going to do this, now your mind starts working. You're opening up all these roads and centers of possibilities of how you're going to make it work, right? So you bring like you wake your mind up. It's now active and it's working and it's calculating, right? So it's very different. You have all these avenues now. So, okay, this one doesn't work. Okay, I'm going to try this one. All right, that didn't work. I'm going to try this one. Okay, move on to the next one. I'm going to try all these different roads and detours. I'm going to get there. I know I'm going to get there. I just have to find the right calculation. I have to find the right road to get me there. So you're right. It definitely opens it up. And we didn't create our minds. We just have to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
Our brain, right? Our minds are designed to protect us from anything that is perceived as dangerous, anything that's perceived as harmful or painful or difficult. Our mind is designed to naturally protect us. That's why we can almost hold on to negative thoughts longer. So if we have a negative thought, we might hold on to that negative thought for days and weeks, whereas if it's a positive one, we hold on to it for a few hours. So let's say your advisor told you something like as feedback and it was like, you know what, you probably should write your essay this way. This, right here, this is, you need to change this. They'll say that, right? And then they'll also tell you, but I see that you wrote this and this is really great. I love what you did here. That person will dwell on what the professor said was wrong. They will dwell on,
Mm-hmm.
for hours and days, weeks and months of, oh, my professor said this. They will remember that probably forever. My professor said, my advisor said that this wasn't good. And they'll almost forget and wipe out of their head the positive thought. Okay, so I'll explain that. There's something called the Losado ratio, Losadio. What that is, that's a ratio of positive thoughts to negative thoughts. And what it says is for every one negative thought that we have, in order to wipe out the one negative thought, we need three positive thoughts. It's kind of like to
Oh,
balance it out. So
okay.
it's like I have a negative thought, and like I said, you'll dwell on the negative thought, right? You'll just keep dwelling on it and dwelling on it. But if you have three positive thoughts after that, so if it's like, I failed the test, okay, you failed the test, or you didn't get matched. The positive thoughts, I can try again. I can do it this way this time. I can hire someone. I know other people who have not matched on the first time and they tried and they got it on their second time. Like you have to combat that negative thought. So it's almost
Mm.
like this is a practice. It doesn't happen like easily and overnight. It's a practice. And when you asked me earlier about my mindset, these are things that you do daily. You practice talking to yourself this way until it becomes second nature.
And I'm wondering if in your own work, if you see any trends in high achievers in the way that they sabotage their success.
So earlier, how I was saying, sometimes high achievers can experience impression management, or they may have a difficult time with their locus of control and those various things. I find that with high achievers, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to feel perfect, to be perfect. Like
Mm-hmm.
no room for error. And I get it. That is what is taught to you. You were taught that you must excel, that you have a certain timeline to do this, you must achieve certain things by a certain age. So I can understand why it's so difficult for them as high achievers. This idea of I must achieve this level of success by the age of 30, by the
And
age
I
of
mean, for some people also, it's a reality. I think, especially for like people who I work with who go on to things like fellowship training, if they are in unfamiliar environments, they feel like they have to work harder than everyone else to prove themselves because people doubt them, and we see like the same kind of issue within the US students of color, professionals of color. There is that pressure to feel like you have to work harder than everyone else and be more perfect than everyone else.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I'm glad that you brought that up. I am not a medical student or was not a medical student, but even in my field of therapy, when you get to a certain level, you don't see many therapists of color, or you don't see many Black therapists or many Caribbean therapists. So I am always like
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, if not 10 out of 10, I am the minority.
Okay.
I am the youngest. I am Black. I am Caribbean. I'm a woman, right? And I'm coming into these situations where, when I was younger, I would feel like I have to work twice as hard. I have to prove myself. And over time, I learned that all I can do is be my best. And what someone else judges as my best, I can't control that. That
Mm-hmm.
was my mindset work. But you're absolutely right. That is a feeling that you get, that now I have to work twice as hard. I have to work twice as long. I have to prove myself. I have to do more. So it is a reality that you experience that when you are not in, your familiar environment, when you go abroad, because you're working against a lot of different things now. You're working with differences in culture, differences in belief, or even what people might perceive of you. All these different things are coming into play. It's not just about now the academics or your skills, it's all of these things that they're dealing with.
So we were talking about their fixation with perfection as one of the things that sabotages high achievers.
Yeah. When you are thinking to yourself, I have to be perfect, right? Some of the ways you sabotage yourself are, one, like we said earlier, you're not reaching out for help. So where you might be able to ask a question, I don't know how to do this. I'm not sure how to do this. You're now trying to, figure it out by yourself, which can cause problems, right? Because you can end up making it worse by messing up. Another
Right.
thing is thinking you have to do all things by yourself, right? Instead of saying, hey, I got a lot on my plate. Can someone help me with some of this? Can someone help me with, figuring this out or doing some of this work for me or whatever? It's like thinking I have to do all of this by myself. I cannot get support to carry this load. Another way that they sabotage themselves is by making up their minds, kind of fortune telling what they think is going to happen already. Like, I know sometimes people will say, you know what, it's already too late for me, so I'm not even going to try. And there's no way to tell the future, right? You can't fortune tell. You don't know what's going to happen, but you've already talked yourself out of something because you felt like, oh, it's not right. It's not going to happen. So, not asking for help if you don't know things, not asking for help when it's too much on your plate. So, maybe you can delegate, maybe you can get help with getting certain things done. And then the last thing was fortune telling, kind of like talking yourself out of things before it happens because you're afraid.
And for people to be successful in the match process, sometimes it doesn't work for them on the first try and they have to go a second or third time. And the process itself requires that one be resilient in terms of to do it even once, but to do it over and over again, definitely more so. Do you have any guidance or any tips on how someone can build up that resilience muscle?
That's a very good question because many people who fail the first time, they'll, want to quit, or the second time they'll want to quit. So there are different things that you need to think about. One is, what is your purpose of doing all of this, right? Being very connected to your purpose in doing this. Why do you want this? What would it mean to you to have this? What would happen if you didn't have it? It's like really staying focused on that why. So you might have heard people talk about that. What is your why? That's what
Right.
it's about. Like, is this a purpose for you? And even using myself for an example, this is a second career for me. I was pursuing a legal career,
Hmm.
and I was not doing so well in that legal career. And I realized, why am I pursuing something that I'm really not fulfilled by? you know, like,
Right.
what am I doing this for? It made it even harder for me to, like, try again and keep going after it. I didn't have a good why for it. So I'm saying to people, like, explore, deeply explore your emotions and your thoughts about what it is that you're doing, because that could be, a possibility that you're pursuing something that is not purposeful to you. It doesn't feel fulfilling. The other thing is, you can't just develop resilience by focusing on your academics and your professional life. You can build resilience in different ways. And one of those ways is trying different things, trying new things and working at them, working to improve at them. So it might not make sense to someone, but I'll tell people, like, if you're interested in painting, or, just randomly, if you're interested in skating, or, planting things, right? Gardening, try these different things, because what you're going to do is you're going to teach your mind through different things how to fail and keep going and improving. You're going to
Hmm.
rewire your mind. So once your mind has the wiring that even though something is challenging and difficult, I can still improve, or even though I failed this thing and I did it again, it was okay. Your mind is going to have that wiring in it that you can apply to anything else, right? So, like, it
Right.
could even be video games. It doesn't have to be like the actual thing that you're going after. The point is, you're wiring your mind to have a new belief. You're downloading new information that we can overcome failures and challenges. It's okay. It's fine. You can apply this same idea to something else.
And so, actually, Seneca, we've been talking so much about your mind and mindset and so on, and it occurred to me that we haven't defined what is the mind.
The mind is a center where, from birth, as we grow up, information is downloaded. So you learn language, you learn, how to speak, you learn about how to interact with people, you learn how to figure things out, how to solve problems, how to deal with challenges. All of this starts the moment you're born. You learn it from your family members, you learn it from all of that. So when I talk about the mind, and when we talk about the mind, we're talking about automatic beliefs, systems, like your thoughts that come up automatically. So some people might think, depending on where they were, that, oh, it's okay to eat meat, or it's not okay to eat meat. Those are things that are downloaded. So now when you go into a different environment or a different situation, right, you might be thinking,
Hmm.
man, these people are eating meat and that's just so wrong. That's
Right.
just not right. But the mind has taught you that this is what is true and this is what is accurate. So whatever you were taught about education or success or money was also in your mind, right? So that's the mind. Now, the brain, we know that there are chemical centers in the brain. We have chemicals like serotonin, oxytocin. We have like different chemicals in the brain that kind of inform us how to feel. And when we feel a certain way, I tell people think, feel, and do. When we feel a certain way, it influences our behaviors. So if we think, I have to be successful because if I'm not successful, I will embarrass my whole family. You'll feel pressure, you'll feel anxious. It might cause you to overcompensate by studying for 15 hours a day, burning yourself out, going to exhaustion so that you can achieve this thing because you do not want to be an embarrassment to your family.
So the mind is really a center.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what IMGs have to achieve really is very difficult. And so I'm wondering if perhaps you could just leave us with a few tips in the same way that you have your daily exercises that they can perhaps do to build their mental strength or to build their mindset as it pertains to the match process.
Well, I'm saying this not because I'm a therapist, but
Okay.
I'm
Go
going
to a
to
therapist.
say people don't realize that you can go to a therapist even though you don't have a full-blown disorder, because there are certain kinds of therapy that, like positive psychology, solution focused therapy, there are certain kinds of therapy that are about improving the way that you think, right? So remember how I shared the Lozado ratio? It can teach you
Yes.
how to think positively, how it can teach you resiliency, like how to deal with failure. So you can go to therapy to work on those things. So if that is available to you, I would suggest that for one thing that you can do. The other thing that I would suggest is, yes, it is important to work on the academic and the professional, but the personal development stuff is very important. You can get that from having a routine of reading books about personal growth and development and mindset. You can listen to podcasts. You can, listen to motivational speakers or people who speak about mindset. Having that as part of your daily routine, because the more that's in your mind, remember how I said it's the center, the more,
Right.
this is filling your mind, the less room there is for the negative thoughts bouncing around. So you decide, right? If your mind is a center, right? There's all this real estate. What kinds of things do you want to put in there? You'd want to put all this positive stuff in there. And then the
Right.
third thing I share with people is having a way to process things that are in your head. High achievers keep a lot in their mind. If you got into the habit of journal writing and placing things on paper, it gives you the ability to have a place to process what you're thinking. It gives you the ability to track that progress. So it's not all in your head. You're not trying to keep up with, okay, I am doing good. I am doing well. I am doing better than I did 2 weeks ago. You get to see that on paper. And it's just a great way to relieve stress too, when you put pen to paper. So just taking just 20 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, it doesn't have to be a long time, just to give yourself a moment where, it's like meditating on your thoughts. You get them on paper and you relieve some stress. You progress. You track your progress. You see how your plans are working out. You get to process emotions that you might not be able to say out loud to other people. You might be afraid to tell people I'm scared or I'm not good at this or I don't know. It's a great method, right?
Yeah.
So therapy, I mean, not only therapy, coaches work with mindset as well. You know, that's, the first thing I would say, working on personal development and journal writing.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that sometimes too, because clearly in my work, I have tons of coaches and some therapists as well, that sometimes you might be so busy as someone who has a lot to do.
Mhm.
But when you sort of paid for that accountability time, you make time for it. So it becomes something that you do despite having this really busy schedule for sure. So even just having someone who is holding you accountable to paying attention to a certain part of your development is really powerful, I found.
It is. And I'm going to, be very transparent here. I've spent thousands of dollars on my personal development.
For
It's
sure.
an investment in yourself. And we need to stress that the investment can't just be in academics. We have to invest in ourselves, what we think, what we feel. We have to invest in that as well. Like you said, when you pay for that, you show up and you right? Because you don't want to be like, the people who sign up for the gym and
Right, right, right.
the gym and you're not showing up and then you're like, but I didn't lose any weight.
Yeah.
It's not working. You have to show up and you have to do the work.
Yeah, you have to. But also, I always think about that, but I'm like, maybe it's that gym price point. Because some of these coaches and therapists, it's like, you're going to show up because
Yeah, yeah.
that wasn't small change.
Yes, it wasn't $10.
Yeah,
It
it
wasn't
sure wasn't.
$20. So you're gonna show up. You're like, I gotta, make the most of this. And like that's a good example because those who have a personal trainer who spend
Hmm.
that $100 a week or whatever it is for the personal trainer, they show up to those personal training sessions and they have results. So,
Right.
yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was something else that you had said that I wanted. Oh, yes, the thing about journaling. So I know not everyone likes to write, but I learned a journaling technique that has been so helpful for me, again, with someone who just has such little time. So I don't know if you've also heard about it and could talk about it, but a coach actually, she challenged me once to make a success journal, and it's really simple. So her instruction was to every day write down 3 things that you're struggling with and then 3 wins that you had for the day. And of course, the wins can be, something that's really simple, including like sending an email that you've, been fearful about sending for weeks or something. And what I realized in doing that process, actually, and I think that, everybody who's going through the match or through any sort of competitive process would actually really benefit from doing this, is that you see your growth over time. And if you get the ultimate goal that you want, you see that. If you don't get that either, you see how resilient you are and just all the different things that you did to make things work to the point where you actually could apply or you're successful the first time or the second time. So it shows you a lot about yourself as well. And it's very motivational, I find, to look back in that success journal.
Mm, definitely. I like that you said that. When I bring up journaling to people, they usually think about the back in the day when you were in high school, middle school, your diary, where you wrote down all this sad stuff, and I had a bad day, and I went to school, and this person made fun of me, or, like
Right.
think of journals as those diaries where you vent all this bad stuff. But like you're saying, you can journal in different ways. You can have different kinds of journals, and there are different techniques. So there's the free writing, writing a paragraph and paragraphs of writing. But there's also like the bullet journaling or creating lists, like you just mentioned, where it doesn't take that much time. If you can make a post on social media, you have time to write, you know,
Right.
a list in your journal. And I don't have what you call the success journal. I have a vision journal. And
Mm-hmm.
in my vision journal, just like how people do vision boards, in my vision journal, write down these are the visions that I have for my personal life. These are the visions
Mm-hmm.
that I have for my business. Like I write out what I want to see. So, for example, if I'm like, 2020, I want to take 3 trips internationally. I'll write down my visions in my journal. I want to do these things. I like to, and I sometimes I'll get specific. I like to go here, here, and here, right? And then I can look back at that journal in 2 years and I can be like, wow, I did that. And I did this and
Mm-hmm.
I did that. And sometimes I do write down the challenges in my journal too. Like, all right, I'm going through a hard time right now. But if you do that, you got to make sure that you write the result, right?
Right.
You can't just write, I lost my job. It's so horrible. When you, when you get your journal and it's only that stuff, oh my God, my life is depressing.
Mm-hmm.
So you lost your job, but then go back when you get that new job that you really love, go back and write that in your journal so you can see your growth.
Yeah. And so you talk about the personal development stuff as investing in yourself. I mean, clearly I'm on board with that, but recently I've been thinking a lot about investments, not just in terms of the ROI, but what we also call the COI in terms of the cost of inaction. And I think a lot of us meet those older people and think, if they've ever done any sort of personal development work, just based on how they communicate or how they behave. And so my question to you is that I think sometimes we'll think of this personal development work or investment in therapy and coaching to grow as a luxury, but is there a cost over time to not doing work,
So,
even if you're a high achiever and you are killing it? You're killing it at work, you're killing it in your studies. What is the cost over time of not working on yourself?
so the cost over time of not working on the personal development side could could lead into some different areas. So there are those who they achieve a lot in their career, and maybe they're doing well, but the personal development stuff could be they have difficulties with self-esteem and self-worth. So maybe they could be, asking for raises, asking for opportunities, networking with certain people, and, their own self esteem is holding them back, which is personal development. That's something you can work on, how you feel about yourself. Another thing that I see that people, could be a cost of not investing in their personal development is they have a hard time with interpersonal communication or interpersonal relationships. So, where others are really good at developing relationships, the ones that matter, that help you to grow and help you to build, those people seem to be more successful and they seem to be breaking through glass ceilings. Where if you were to work on how you develop relationships, how you feed those relationships, and what I mean by that is there are people all around that can help us. But when we feel like I don't know how to talk to people, or I don't need people, or these things are not important, I don't know how to communicate, it can cost us some really, great relationships. So we're not taught in school to work on personal development for these kind of things, for communication, for self-esteem, for relationships. But those
Right.
are things that are what help people to grow. Where if you don't have the skills or the experience or talent, that that personal growth can take you to another level, because now you have these additional set of skills and you
Right.
feel good about yourself, you feel happier, and there's a correlation from happiness to success. The happier you are, the more successful you'll feel.
Absolutely. And so actually it's really cool because I know you are, like you said earlier, your background is from the Caribbean. Which island, by the way?
St. Vincent.
Okay, all right. And so I do work with a lot of clients who are from the Caribbean, and that transition into US culture sometimes is very difficult because people might not understand. I mean, okay, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time and you don't know me, I'm from Jamaica, and I was about to say most, but actually, wow, all of my tertiary education, took place in the United States. So it's sort of an understanding of both Caribbean and I'll say Northeast US culture. And it's like watching people make that transition sometimes. I'm encouraging them as a coach to speak more, brag more, sort of thing. But it's really difficult for people who don't understand that that is a skill that they'll just have to develop because it's a very different culture. And so I don't know if you have any personal experience in that, like if you came to the US really young to the point where it wasn't a problem, or if it's something that you're able to see in high achieving clients who might be from a culture, someplace in the Caribbean or even just a home culture where humility is emphasized and, kindness and making space for others first is emphasized. And how can they deal with transitioning into a culture where it's emphasized that you put yourself out there, and if you want something you talk up, because you need to talk up yourself so that you're not overshadowed by people who just do a better job of presenting themselves.
Oh man, we could talk about that for a whole hour. But the short answer is yes, I experienced that culturally in the Caribbean. It is sometimes frowned upon to promote yourself. And promoting yourself is almost like to them boasting, and it's seen negatively, which in this field, right? When you are applying and interviewing and it's almost like you're selling yourself. You have to say, this is what I want. I am qualified for this. That can feel very unfamiliar and very uncomfortable for you. Now, even if you didn't grow up in the Caribbean and your parents are Caribbean, it can still affect you because that's what you've grown up around, right? That's the mindset that you've adapted as well. So
Right.
I tell people for that, sometimes finding networks and groups of people who are your peers so you can learn how to practice these things so you can feel okay doing it is going to help you change that mindset. If you're around other higher achievers who are doing these things over time and you're also, promoting yourself, you're going to feel like, oh, okay, this is okay and this is normal, right? So like I said, you can rewire the way that you think.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so my final question to you, very random, but it's a little section that I like to call 60 seconds of fun questions. Okay, so just say the first thing that comes to your mind and don't think about it too much. All right?
Okay.
All right, so flats or heels?
Heels.
On a Friday night, podcast binge or Netflix?
Netflix.
In general, Netflix or a movie theater?
Netflix.
Who, dead or alive, would you like to meet?
Dr. King. Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King. What would you ask that person?
How did you do this? I know he dealt with depression. I would ask him, how did you do this? Like, what pulled you, got you to this point?
Beach day or pool day?
Beach day.
Summer or fall?
Summer.
New York or Atlanta?
Atlanta. Haven't been there.
Pet peeve?
Poor communication.
What's the last photo in your phone?
I went to something called the Bubble Run, me covered in bubbles.
Thanks so much, Seneca.
Awesome. You're welcome. Have a super day.
Thank you for tuning in to the IMG Residency Match podcast. To learn more about how you can match into your dream residency, even if right now you don't know where to start, go watch a free training brought to you by the IMG Residency Match Application Accelerator at imgresidencymatch.com. By the end of the training, you'll know how to create an application that communicates to programs why they need to invite you to interview and rank you highly so you can match. Now, don't forget to share this podcast with at least one colleague you know applying to the match so you can celebrate together on match day. And be sure to rate and subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And now we close with a word of inspiration from me, your host, Shauna Kay. Treat your mind like a sacred space because your mind is your might.